Welcome to Built with Grit. I am your host and strategic partner in cost reduction, Luis Fernandez. And today I am joined by my friend Nick, who's got a very interesting product and a great story. And apparently he doesn't sleep because he is overseas. It's 2 p.m. and he's in Europe doing a podcast at 10 o'clock at night. If you are a fan of the entrepreneur lifestyle, here's a little taste. Nick, how you doing, friend?
Not bad, Louis. Thanks for having me on. And exactly, like sleep is very overrated. Definitely here in Europe.
I'm not sure so much that it's overrated as much as like the opportunity cost of not doing anything for 6 to 8 hours is well, yeah. I guess 6 to 8 hours, that's like the minimum recommendation, right?
6 to 8 is like if I get six, that I'm a happy man. There will be other entrepreneurs listening, probably with children, and like when you work different time zones, and you need to do what you need to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that I think like it's important to know that if you're gonna go out on your own, that mentality of you need to do what you need to do, like that's what it's gonna be.
100%.
um I remember being an employee and like walking out and being like, I'm not going to answer any texts tonight until tomorrow, right? But when you're on your own, that's not really an option.
No, it's different, but like I would say I've never had that. I've never had the kind of 9 to 5 mentality.
Mhm.
Like even when I was just starting out, like just in my normal professional career, like and even side jobs I've had when I was like 15 years old, I was always taught that no matter what job you've got, just pretend that it's your business. That
Hmm.
little piece that you're doing, like my grandpa always used to say that, so like I took that with me no matter where I used to go, and I would give it my all. Whether I was driving like forklifts, like as a holiday, as a part-time holiday job, like I would give them my 100%. Like nothing was like too big or too small for me, so like I've kind of taken it with me.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a good habit to have. I think sometimes and maybe it was just like that short timer mentality of if it's not appreciated, it becomes expected, and then it's like, all right, so what am I doing here? Like this is supposed to be kind of a reciprocal type relationship, right?
It's a two-way street, right? So like no, like I think from that perspective, it's I give it my all no matter what it is, and I don't expect anything. I know what, and this is one thing I've always used to say as well. Like I might not be the smartest guy. Like there's so many other people that was way smarter than I am. There's people that have more qualifications, as whatever it is. But
Mm.
there's one thing I can control, and that's perhaps comes from my sports background. But that's like no one will outperform me. That's not
Yeah,
going to happen. And if I need
nice.
to work 24 hours, I'll work 24 hours around the clock.
So let's talk about your background a little bit. Tell me about where you grew up.
So I grew up in a small town in Holland, and very secure upbringing. Mom and dad like had everything, friends. We used to leave our front door open. Everybody could just walk in. There was cars unlocked. That's the kind of upbringing I used to get. And I've said this a couple of times as well, where people like they've got this fire and within them because of their upbringing. They came from nothing. They came from and they have this massive fire within them. I don't have that. Well, I've got the fire. Don't get me wrong. I've got the fire. But what I don't have is I didn't have a struggle in my upbringing.
Mm.
Got great friends, got great, like, so that everything always came quite easy in that sense. Whereas like normal, like I could have stayed this like, middle class guy forever. And it's an amazing lifestyle if that's what you're after. Well, I was always after more. So I kind of left the nest quite quick because I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. So like I moved across the country, then eventually I moved to the UK, to Scotland, where actually my wife is from, and there we done quite a fair bit together. We come from a background of like marketing and design, so that's what both of us kind of did. Then we had the opportunity to work in China, which we did. We took the opportunity and just packed our bags and left. Then we had an opportunity to work in Germany, so we moved back to Germany. Then we moved across to Dubai for a bit to like do a couple of things there, not full time, but done some work over there, and moved back to Holland for a tiny bit. Then I landed back in the UK, back in Scotland, and I've kind of been doing work like within the UAE and the US. Those are my main focal point. So that's kind of like my, like I've spread my wings and I've traveled before the kids came around. So like I'm quite appreciative of that.
So is your family Dutch?
Yeah, so everybody in my family is. I've never done my full tree to see where they're all coming from. Like, yeah, like born and bred, all Dutch. Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, obviously, you don't sound Dutch, right? Like
No, I don't have that. Like if you talk sports, like like a Louis van Gaal, and like like all these kind of like. No, I don't. I left my accent behind when I left Holland.
All right. Well, I mean, I wouldn't know the dishes. I'm sure the Scots can tell, but it all sounds.
Probably,
yeah.
They're more broad than I am.
So talk to me a little bit about. Well, I guess let's start with what your product is and what you're doing, and then, or maybe how you got to, what was the inspiration for this. And I'll probably interrupt you like 10 times as I usually do.
Interrupt and throw questions my way. No, like all that. It kind of started with like our a good friend of mine who unfortunately, like rest his soul, like he passed away due to COVID last year, which is terrible. An amazing individual, an amazing mind. So Gary and I met each other around 3 years ago, I would say. I was doing a lot of marketing, a lot of business development, like helping some other people out, doing my own thing.
So you were already a solopreneur by that point?
I was at that point already doing bits on the side and having my own little firm. Yeah, a small firm, but yeah, like I was already on my own. And we got introduced by a mutual friend, and he was like, Nick, with your connections and everything else, and you might be able to help it. He's got an amazing story and amazing. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to promise anything, but I always loved it, right? Like, and then, so we met up, and I was like, what you've got, Gary, is absolutely ludicrous that's not out there yet. And the more I got to know him, the more I saw he was an amazing mind, but perhaps not the right person to bring it to market. Like he needed some people like to support him in that. And I said, you know what, I think I can do that for you. So I did, and we kind of went on that journey together. And that kind of story that we had to make the industry more sustainable, not just from an environmental perspective, but from a monetary perspective as well. Like, we know how important a bottom line cost is. Like if you can have a tiny bit more profit, that could either make or break you as a company. So the great thing about what we had is like, and I will get to that right now, but is what Gary came up with initially. So he was the original founder. We've perfected it now and actually are in that process of like fine tuning it. But what we're doing is, and this is the way I normally explain it to everyone, any diesel combustion engine. So what we do is the diesel molecules that you burn, we burn them more holistically, meaning so this is one thing I always, when you have a bonfire and you throw a massive tree trunk on a bonfire, that will burn on the outside, but tomorrow morning you come back and the tree trunk is still there. Not a big chunk, it's charred from the outside, but still, fresh on the inside. That's the same thing that happens to diesel molecules in a diesel engine. We see a lot of black smoke all the time. That's unburned diesel. So what we do is we kind of introduce small amounts of gas into the air intake, into the engine. I won't go too technical, but basically what we do is we chop up those diesel molecules in finer pieces. So they burn quicker and more holistically. So therefore you burn more diesel and you don't get the black smoke. So we reduce the CO2 emissions, the carbon particulates that come out of the engine. And with that, you need less diesel for the same amount of power required to, to forward the truck and whatever trailer you're carrying. So that's basically, that's what we do. We clean up and burn diesel more effectively.
So I'm gonna read you a stat here that so in our business we also consult companies on fuel savings. And when we signed up to have this conversation, I went and looked up some of our little talking points. But so a fleet of 500 vehicles, and each one is driving 24,000 miles a year, which is kind of standard, right?
Yeah.
They accumulate 12 million miles annually. Now, if they could reduce their bills by just 1/4 of a cent per mile, they would save $30,000 a year. 1/4 of a cent per mile, and that translates into 30 grand. I mean, that is it's a behavior change. Like it's a hill change, right? Like a small mistake, and you can make that change. And the converse is obviously true as well.
Yes.
Right. So every 1/4 cent of increase is another 30 grand.
Exactly. And we see as well, like, state dependent as well, like what you pay per gallon on the pump right now, it's, it's shooting through the roof.
Right.
So, if you can save on your fuel cost, and we know that, like, normally in the logistics industry or mining or whatever industry we're in, and we're using heavy vehicles, that's one of the biggest outgoings and cost for any organization, for any company. So it's in that sense, it's like, like it's a win-win-win situation.
Right.
Everybody wins. And to put another big element to that is because we're burning more of the molecules and we chopping them up finer, the engine doesn't need to burn as hot. So the engine actually burns cooler, which means from a maintenance perspective, and we know as well, maintenance is a big thing. So, like, some people have their trucks for like 4 or 5 years. With what we're doing, we've seen like an increase of 2 to 3 years.
That's massive. That is a huge reduction in expense when you think about that over even a 10-year discounted cash flow period, right? Like you're doing, if you're doing a 10-year planning DCF, you're buying 1 or 2 less vehicles per 10, right?
And we know exactly, and we know what's happening right now. Like, you can't even get a truck, so holding on to your truck a bit longer is perhaps like not a bad idea.
So, I mean, this is kind of what about if I've got the final tier 4 DPF system installed in my vehicle? How difficult is it to install your product into what we do?
It's for our engineers, and this is the main thing. It's qualified engineers, our qualified engineers that install the product. We're about to move into the US, and this is the biggest thing for us. And I know everybody's looking for engineers. That's another one that we've got a shortage of. But this is the big thing about it as well. Like, any engineer, we can train up to do our course and be a qualified Cybus 21 installer. And the good thing about that is, like, at the moment we sit just under 3 hours of installation time, but we're in the process, and we're really working hard to get that down to around an hour and a half, an hour of installation time, because we're not tinkering with the engine itself. It's all on the outside. It's a retrofit at this moment in time. Our installers can do that within, like, on average, within like 2 to 3 hours.
That's while oils are getting changed, or changing tires, like, you could do this at the same time.
Yes, well, we know how valuable time is. Like, I don't need to explain any truckers, like, or even like logistics companies, like, how important time is. If we say, okay, well, you can do with one of our systems, but your truck is, out of the equation for like 2 days or a day or half a day, that's just not good enough.
Right.
And so for us, it was very important that not just the product worked, but the way it's installed and uninstalled needed to be very, very simple. Because the good thing is you can install our product on one of your trucks. That truck breaks down, it's got an accident or whatsoever, but there's nothing wrong with the system. We'll take that system off, we install it on the next.
Nice.
That's how simple it is.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the journey of getting this started, right? Because you've got, I'm sure there are people that have a great idea, great product. We see it on Shark Tank all the time, right? Like that's how they're getting their head start. You say you've been at this for 3 years now. Talk to me about this grind, and now you're finally getting ready to get into the US.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about building something with grit, I mean, this is straight clawing to get yourself noticed and into the rooms and the decisions made. So tell me a little bit about that.
That's you're spot on. Like it all starts with a great idea, but a great idea with the wrong people stays a great idea and it never gets to market. So a bad idea with the right people will still get to market. Right. And I'm not saying we've got a bad idea.
Pet rock.
People. Yeah. So I think what I'm trying to say there is like, like there's a lot of times, and I've said this a couple of times, and I will actually give a shout out to my friend Trey Greggs. He said this to me, and I keep on mentioning this. You need to make sure that you've got the right people on the bus, but it doesn't mean that getting the right people on the bus is enough. Sometimes like the person who's driving the bus actually should not be driving that bus. It's somebody else who's better qualified for the driving part. And I think that's very important, where if you assemble the right team around with the right expert, a lot of things you'll learn on the go, right? And any entrepreneur will say that we'll fall, we'll fail, but we'll keep on going. We keep on getting up. And I think that's the same for us. I didn't know, the biggest thing for me was I didn't know the industry well enough. I probably still don't, but for the last 3 years, what I'd done, and I said as well to Gary at that point, I was like, it's not good enough to understand our product and what it can do for the industry. You need to understand the people in the industry, the lingo. When I first 3 years ago, I had no idea what LTL was. I had no idea what 3P, like I didn't know. It wasn't my industry. And people say this, no matter which podcast I listen to, people I speak to, everybody has the same. You roll into this industry, right? And when the industry hooks you and it got you, you're not getting it. And I will say this, I'm loving this industry. It's probably like the best 3 years of my life, as well as being the hardest of my life. I've pulled quite a few hairs like out of this time, but it's been a journey of grit. 100%. It took us a while to get us finally to a certain stage, and just having that product wasn't good enough,
right,
for it to straight away, like in our heads, we're like, okay, why is it not just flying off the shelves? Yeah. Right? There's certain things that like, and I would say like from a perspective, if you don't need investment and it's just pure sweat equity, that's great, right? So like I said, for the last 3 years, I've worked, sweat equity, because I don't need a marketing budget. I don't need like none of that. Like that was done with zero. The only thing is like for final commercialization in different parts of the world, we required a small investment to get it to that stage, because whatever we do here over in the UK does not match 100% exactly the same as what's happening over, for example, the US. And to make sure that it's fully commercialized, like don't get me wrong, we're fully patented. We've got a couple of old patents, new patents pending. That's fine, right? That's global. But then when it comes to actually understanding the industry in the geographical area that you're operating in, different stories. So we're in the process of our final kind of funding round to get it to the stage that we need to get to for commercialization over in the US. But when we're finally there, it's all hands on deck. And then
you mentioned something a little bit kind of offhand, and I think it like bears repeating and emphasizing. Now you didn't use these words, but what you're talking about is having a deep customer understanding. right?
100%.
And fully knowing the experience of the person. So you have a product and knowing who is going to use that product, why are they using that product, what problem or pain is that product solving, and when you talk about the product, you're talking about those pains, right? So I can tell you that, hey, my company is going to save you money, and you're going to hang up on me, and we're never going to talk again, right? But if I talk about the reason that people choose to work with us, and I say every single day it gets harder to hire somebody because the costs for employment continue to go up, and those fixed costs are not something that that you require them to do your operations and to create your product. Meanwhile, all of your shipments are more expensive, exponentially more expensive. Your container that you were buying for $900 is now $13,000 to get it over here. The fuel costs are going up. And meanwhile, your customers are expecting you to reduce your prices. And let's not forget inflation. So we talk about pressure on the bottom line, that just making the same profit margin, that 7 or 8 or 9% from last year to this year continues to get harder year over year over year. I can help you alleviate that pain, right? Like we're having a different conversation now. And that's where you're talking about having that revelation. Why doesn't it fly off the shelves? And you got there, right? Like you got to understand what those people are going through.
You're spot on. And one thing I didn't want to do, and I've never done this, and some people might say I might be the worst salesperson that's out there, but I always came from a marketing perspective, which is it's a problem solving perspective, right? So I remember when I was small, my dad used to drive trucks with one of his best friends who owns, like in Holland, a small company. I think he's got 3 trucks, right? Like 90% of the US has, right? They're the small guys. I see them in the trenches. I see them work. I see them these guys literally make the world go around. Right. Without those guys, we don't have the products that we want to buy for Christmas right now, or whatever it is, right? It's these guys that, in my opinion, these guys are heroes, right? Because I've seen it firsthand. Don't get me wrong. When I was younger, that was awesome because I was able to go to Spain, right? Driving in a truck. That's great as a kid. I see it now with my 3-year-old son. Trucks are he waves at them all, and these are heroes in his eyes. And when you understand that these guys are away from home, that they're everything else, so you understand their pain points, and then you understand as well that if they're owner operators, for example, then you understand that giving them the tools to kind of say, okay, well, we can help you with you're not going to be stranded. I'm not going to say 100% certainty you're never going to be stranded on the side of the road, but one thing I can tell you is that we can reduce the maintenance costs. We know that from data that we've collected over the years. And then the same with the fuel cost. If that's coming out of your pocket, that's not going onto the table for your kids, for the family, whatever, then you need to understand what their pain points are before you can say, look how great our product is.
Right.
And that's never been the angle that I wanted to go in. And I think I want to help others, and that's the main aim of what we're trying to do. And don't get me wrong, if the environment benefits from what we're doing, that's great for everybody else on this little blue planet.
I think a lot of folks also don't understand the impact of Final Tier 4 and what that did to not just the transportation industry, but agriculture, construction, and mining, all of the heavy equipment, diesel run, oil, all of these, the Final Tier 4. So when the government said your emissions need to be at a certain level with these particulate levels, it was an engineering task to get to a certain point. Then they, through government fiat, added another level. And it, on paper, it didn't seem like that extreme of a move. But to get the technology, the closer you get to zero, it's an exponential effort to move just a little bit, just barely make a notch in it. I mean, the amount of effort that goes into it. And if you look at a interim tier 3 to a final tier 4, all of the equipment that was added and all the costs that were added. And I was watching machines when I worked for John Deere, I was watching machines that the price increased 30% of the machine, and it did nothing new. It was just, here's another 30% of cost for the same product that you had before. And now, it's so, it was a massive disruption to an industry. And I don't think that, I don't think it was intended to, the fallout of that was not really fully understood, and how much that hurt, particularly those smaller owner operators.
Like, and it's the small, don't get me wrong, like we want to help the big guys as much as we want to help the small guys, but it's these small guys like where you feel it. And one of the things when we're talking about, like, I think it's in the region of 8 million trucks, right? Like that's over in the US. Like, other countries like Spain, they've got 1 million. Like, the UK's got around 300,000. But like, if you think about like the amount of trucks and heavy equipment and everything else is on the road right now, and I've had this conversation with multiple people in the past where people are like, yeah, but what about EV? I was like, that's fine. There will, like, I'm not trying to discredit EV or whatever. That's, they're trying to do a similar thing as what we're doing, right? And that's great. The problem that we have, or the challenge that we have, is they're trying to get to somewhere, whether it's 2030, 2040, 2050, wherever they're, we're talking about, they're gonna, have failures and get up again, and at some point they will get there. But one thing that what's going to happen with all these trucks that are on the road right now, they're not going to disappear overnight. Right. The small guys can just like say, you know what, I've got 3 trucks. They're secondhand trucks. They fix them themselves. Like, they're in the, like, they can say, okay, you know what, I'll get rid of these 3 trucks, get 3 EVs that do exactly the same and give me exactly the same mileage and whatever it all is. That's not going to happen. Not just now, like, not with an infrastructure that's based on diesel. Right. Not like, and I'm not saying we can all play in the same sandpit, right? It's big enough. If we're all trying to do a similar thing and trying to reduce maintenance, we're trying to reduce emissions, we're trying to, like, let's play together on this. Right. And therefore, like, if we can help out all the truckers and logistics companies and even generators and ships, because it's in a sense what our system works on marine as well. It's not just like, the trucking industry. And that's the beauty of it. Let's just not wait around till 20, 30, 40, 50, whenever that may be. Let's do something now. Let's, like, if you put a product, and like, of course, I would love this, put our Cybus 21 product on every single individual truck in the US right now, today. Tomorrow, there's around 20 to 30% less emission getting put out in the atmosphere. That's massive. Yeah. So like, and that's not me trying to, no, that's a fact that I can put out there. Unfortunately, I don't think we've got installers that can do it that quick, but you know what I mean? Like this is something that can definitely, and I said it before, it's a win-win-win situation. Everybody wins. So I absolutely love that. So talk to me a little bit about, the strategy of taking a company international and breaking into a market like the United States. And, another thing about this particular industry that you're going into is that it's an older industry, as in, like, the people that are in it are older people. And this is not, there are not too many kids in high school right now that are excited about driving a truck. Right. They want to get into the social media and sort of the technology realm. I've had workers for me that have been welders, that have been mechanics, that have been assemblers, wrench turners. And I watched year over year, the population that we were picking from kept getting older to find those experienced folks. And then you see it in the truckers. And so the thing with that is that industry is also usually set in a certain modus operandi. So how are you, besides the government fiat that can do it by pen and force them to change, how do you penetrate a market like that and start selling the product? I think, again, it's understanding the market. Like, we'll get back into that, right? Like, it's definitely understanding the market, understanding the people. And I think we need to, we had this conversation the other day where it's up to us, right? And I feel like I'm part of the industry now. It's our duty, like, to make sure that we can stop picking from a younger generation, because it's like I rolled into this industry and I would not want to turn back, right? I look back at the last 3 years and they've been the best 3 years of my life, in the sense of like the people I've met, the industry. It's not an easy industry. I'm never going to say like, it's an easy industry, let's go. But it's such an amazing industry, and there is something for everyone, whether it's drivers, right? And we should be recruiting from like an earlier age, because was it now 21 before you get everything else? It's like around 23 before they can start driving. Like we should lower that age and start getting, if we can go into schools right now and make it seem out to be that we've got the most amazing industry, then it will always be the older generation that we need to pick from. And I think when it comes to older generations, I don't think that yes, some people might be stuck in their ways, but if it's improvement, everybody wants an improvement. And this is another thing I've always told myself, and then someone, I can't remember who actually taught me this, but they always said, no matter what's happening, everything is your fault.
Right.
And if that's the starting point from what you do, like if it's an older generation, there's and I fail to sell to them or explain to them or whatever I can in my product, then that's my fault because I didn't understand them well enough.
Oh, I wasn't giving you an excuse, Nick. I was talking about how are you getting past this problem, right? Because it's I think it's unique to the industry. You can go to a place like Google and talk to them about some new technology. They'll be more apt to take a risk than Sam's trucking company, who's been running the same route for 22 years, right?
But this is then the biggest thing. We've had supporters from day one, right? And I'm not going to name them all, but like people know who they are, and like some of them are older, some of them are younger. Without these people, we cannot do it. And I'll hold my hand up, right? Like it's if you don't have brand ambassadors, because that's what they are, right?
Right.
If we, for example, if we are able to finally get out over to the US, I can't wait to meet these people finally in the flesh. Yeah. And like we put one or two of these products on their trucks. What do you think is going to happen, right? They're part of this community. They're a trucker, right? Right. And if you see like a lot of times when I see truckers versus truckers, it's there's a certain, it's like bikers, right? You salute each other. That's it, right? That's beautiful to see. So
word of mouth is infinitely more powerful too, though. Exactly. A recommendation from your buddy who's also been in the industry 20 years, like, hey, you need to check this one out. They're gonna follow, right? So that's awesome.
100%, and I cannot do it without those guys. And we see the importance of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got this strategy to enter the US and break into a market. What is your competition coming into this place, and some of the barriers besides the knowledge, right? Because it seems like you're educating about a product that's not, so it's not so much that you're competing with anybody. It sounds like you're more so competing with knowledge.
Yeah, I think, so anybody who's trying to improve the existing trucks in any shape or form, I think you should see as competition. I think it's silly to say that, yes, on paper, we might be the only company in the world that's doing exactly what we do and how we do it, but it doesn't mean that there's no competition, right? I think the biggest thing is that the luck that we have is we've got these three elements: the maintenance, the fuel cost, and the emissions. Those are three elements combined into one, where there's companies out there that might do, one of the three or maybe two. We do all three. The other thing I think is how to say this, where competition is good, right? That makes us not sit back and be laid back and like, we've got this covered. No, we know that we need to, when we get to market, we can always improve, right? We can improve like how quick we can install this. We can improve the emissions. For example, like one of the competition you could say is AdBlue, right? Like I don't know what the equivalent is in the US. Here in the UK we call it AdBlue diesel engines, which reduces the particles. Like, and that's almost standard in cars, trucks right now here. Anything that's new coming off the conveyor belt today.
Okay.
The only thing with AdBlue is that needs to heat up before it works.
Yeah.
And with our product, we do more things than just the particulates. But like that needed to happen for certain, clean zones over here in the UK. Like with like an old truck, for example, if you would drive into London city centre, you'll get fined because your truck is not clean enough. But with our product installed, all of a sudden, like you're all the way up to like a Euro 6, Euro 7 like truck. That means you can go in all these clean zones with no problem, no hassle.
Wow. So if somebody was listening to you kind of talk about this and they're really interested and they want to, get this, is it something that you could get today? Like if, somebody here in the United States wanted, is this something they could get today here?
No, is the short answer. Unfortunately, today it's COVID is still one of the, because we were actually meant to be over in the US last year doing final trials and testing, which we've already done here, but we need to run that same kind of protocol over in the US. So what we have is when that final part of investment comes in, where we actually are able to put that to work and going over to the US and do those trials and those testings, what we straight away are going to do is initial trials with companies that have supported us from day one. So I would say that's around a dozen companies that we've already kind of like hand selected that are going to run our product for like around 4 weeks. When that's done, and after that's done, and after they've kind of like successfully rounded up those trials, from there on we start the production already, and that's already like we're trying to put those pillars in place, because one of the main things that we try to do is not to try to manufacture something over in China, the UK, if our client is in the US. So what we want to make sure is that whatever we need to manufacture will be manufactured locally. So if you buy a product, it's shipped to you within like a day, and it's installed in less than a couple of hours. So that kind of process from like sale to like installation needed to be very streamlined and very quick. The quicker we could get that, the better it is for the client.
Nice. I love this, and I think it's really great product that you got going on here, and I'm excited to see it here in the United States. Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you right now, what is the best way for them to do that?
A couple of ways, probably like LinkedIn, always good. Follow me on LinkedIn, send me a direct message, so Nick Roemer, Roemer. As we say, as some of my friends said it, rumor has it. So like, yeah, follow that hashtag. Nick.Roemer@cybus21.com, or find me on the website, www.cybus21.com. Any other way, like just reach out to you if nobody can follow it, and you will do the last final straw. So any other shape you like, my phone number might be on LinkedIn. I'm always open for a phone call as well. So
yeah, well, we've already established that at the beginning that
I don't sleep.
I don't sleep. Now, is there a way that one of this, somebody hears this and they think, well, I'd like to get on the list, or just be in that next early bird round of stuff? Is there a way to get, be on the front of the line for when it's open up for everybody?
Yeah, so 100%. So like even on our website, you can request a trial, or direct message me as well. One thing that we're gonna round up as well is like the early birds, as you say, early adopters. they kind of get like a discount on, and then I know that's a bit of a cheesy one, like, you know, trying to get them hooked up, but again, like, you know, cost is of the essence. And you know, like we round up a list, and I think the earlier we speak to people, the quicker we know how we can help them. And I think that's the biggest thing. You know, let's have a conversation and see. I'm not going to promise the world, but I know that we can help people out.
I think it's awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited for. Well, how about if somebody wants to invest in you? Can they do that still too?
Yeah, 100%. We're actually still looking for this. Is the challenge that we've had for the last I would say the last couple of months, where one of our main investors that was going to invest had another investment fall through that was actually going to invest our product. And that's one of the things. Never keep all your eggs in one basket. So like that's one of the hard things that you learn. But you know, you learn from that. Yes, we're still looking for a strategic partner and investor over in the US, because we know as well that wherever we're going to operate in, you know, we need strategic partners. And if there's an investor or strategic partner over in the US, that's even better for us.
Perfect. Okay, so when we get this, you're gonna send it. You got to send this out in your packet then.
100%. Yes, I will do it.
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, man. I want to thank you for taking time late at night and you know, having this discussion. I think it's an amazing product. I'm excited to see it on the streets. And as you and I have already spoken, I tell you, you know, it's not just trucks. You know, there's a lot of diesel engines running around out there. Would love to see it on
100%.
everything. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I appreciate being on, and I can't wait to finally be over in the US and get a good US barbecue, right? Like that's one of like all these barbecues have been promised, so I can't wait.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Nick.
Thanks, Liz. Bye.